So this is an article one of our moderators in the Type 2 Diabetes Support Group wrote on explaining why we do not follow the American Diabetes Association plan. I will have this on the blog if you'd like to read it later on. Number 1, the ADA tells you that an A1C under 7 is excellent. Yet studies clearly show damage being done at numbers that high. Read Blood Sugar 101, either the book or the website, for a great summary of the science on this. Settling for ADA targets will virtually guarantee complications. 2, the ADA will tell you that you need carbs, but no one can point to a study that shows carbs are essential. That's right, study the science behind the ADA claims and you will see that they are false. The only rationale for this claim is a fear of fat. If you can't get energy from carbs, you have to get it from fat or protein. The problem is the fear of fat was never based in science, only politics and corporate academic rivalries. The ADA will tell you that if you live long enough, you'll eventually need to inject insulin. They'll tell you that insulin needs will increase over time, and once you get on insulin, you will never be able to stop. We know from experience of many with diabetes, many over the decades, that doesn't have to be true. Dr. Bernstein's book, Diabetes Solutions, will prove to you that low-carb diets are the answer and that the ADA guidelines of 30 to 60 grams per meal simply do not promote long-lasting health. Many of us have tried following the guidelines set by the ADA and promoted by doctors who don't know better. Many of us skipped to the end and went straight to low-carb diets. Some of us are able to maintain normal blood sugar numbers, fasting under 100, and A1C in the vicinity of 5.0 without insulin. Others do it with far less insulin than we would need eating an ADA diet. When we ask our doctors or dietitians or nurses how many carbs we can eat, they're going to give you the high numbers they get from the ADA because that's what people want to hear. They aren't trying to spread misinformation. They're just telling you what they know. That's right, our doctors need to take more classes on nutrition and how nutrition affects your body. The ADA has two customers, drug companies and food manufacturers who produce a good chunk of their funding, and people with diabetes who want to be told I can eat normal. For me, normal applies to my blood sugar, not my diet. I can live long and healthy with normal blood sugar. I cannot live long and healthy with a normal diet. I choose long and healthy. Written by Adam Wells. I also have another article that was in a mainstream magazine. Why we won't tell diabetics the truth. This is written by a dietitian, Diana Rogers, RD. Here's all your typical ADA magazines telling you can eat all your favorite things just in moderation. It's appalling constantly at the misinformation we nutrition experts are telling folks with diabetes. It's all over the place. Everything in moderation mantra. And how we need to eat less meat, less fat, and more grains. This information is making people sick. Last week this ad popped up in my Facebook book several times. 10 foods that are great for diabetics. This clickbait article is also making the rounds on several other sites. Dates, berries, garlic, flax seeds, apple, broccoli, oats, melons, kale. Now, I don't think kale is bad, but this list is like telling alcoholics to drink a little more orange juice or sprinkle some chia seeds into their martini and omitting the fact that they need to stop drinking booze. In our quest to avoid the truth and focus on individual superfoods that will save us, this post is telling diabetics that dates are amazing because they have 4 grams of fiber. They forget to mention that 7 dates equals 126 grams of carbs with no fats. So that's pretty much like a syringe of sugar shot directly into your blood. None of these top lists have protein, and the only fat was flax seeds. But what about fatty fish or fish oil, which is much more bioavailable? Why aren't we instead telling them to avoid excess carbs? Because the last time I checked, you can actually reduce blood sugar by not eating sugar. I've been on a protein and meat vindication, looking into how much protein we need, how much we're eating, and what's the best source. For this post, I decided to switch gears and look into the recommendations for carbs. How many carbs do we really need? The answer is 0. The macronutrient recommendations are based on the book published by the Institutes of Medicine. I reviewed the recommendations for protein in this post, which I will illustrate the science justifying the RDA for protein is pretty poor. The evidence is even worse when looking at the carbohydrate recommendations. They based the carbohydrate recommendation of 87 to 120 grams per day on the amount of glucose needed to avoid ketosis. They arrive at 100 a day to be the efficient amount to fuel the central nervous system without having to rely on a replacement of glucose by keto acid. And then they say that it should be recognized that the brain can still survive or receive enough glucose from the metabolism of the glycerol component of fat, meaning ketosis is no big deal. In fact, it's actually a good thing, and this is not the same as diabetic ketoacidosis that type 1 and insulin-dependent type 2 can get. What are the dangers of overeating carbs? I will list these 2 articles, the links for these in the description below. The column for adverse effects of excessive consumption states no defined intake level at which potential adverse effects of digestible carbs are identified. It also happens to say that the maximum intake of added sugars should be limited to providing more than 25% of energy. That's 125 grams of carbs from sugar on a 2,000 calorie diet. To give some perspective, one 12-ounce can of Coke has 39 grams of sugar. This means they're saying for someone eating 2,000 calories, it's okay to drink more than 3 Cokes a day, plus other carbs, as long as they eat less meat, less fat, and of course more grains. Is this really what we should be telling people? According to the Institute of Medicine, published reports disagree about whether a direct link exists between the trend towards increased intakes of sugar and rates of obesity. It appears that the effects of increased sugars on energy are mixed, and the increased intake of added sugars are most often associated with increased energy. There is no clear and constant association between increased added sugars and BMI. Therefore, the above data cannot be used for either added or total sugars. What is the question? I'm not kidding. This is exactly what it says. The authors also go on to say that there's no risk of diabetes from consuming large amounts of sugar. This study saying that it showed that the more sugar one ate, the lower the risk of diabetes. OMG, these people are just out to get you on insulin, aren't they? I looked up the paper, and the authors did say that the more sucrose someone ate, the lower the risk. But they also said that glucose and fructose intakes were positively associated with diabetes. Last time I checked, glucose plus fructose equaled sucrose. How does this make sense? The researchers also found significant discrepancies between self-reported diabetes and actual diagnosed rates. Okay, this is pretty long, so let's just skip over. How many carbs are we telling diabetics to eat? Well, I know that they told me to eat 45 per meal and 15 for a snack. Too much. If type 2 is a result of uncontrolled blood sugars, you think that we should be telling folks to reduce their intake of sugar. We're telling them to eat more than the recommended dietary allowance. Even though we have no actual need for carbs at all, and the RDA is 30 grams a day, the general guidelines for adults with diabetes is 45 to 60 per meal, and snacks having 15 to 30. That's what I was told. Okay. Carbohydrate counting. Just skip over that. Let's just go to this. We're completely failing diabetics. We nutrition experts are miserably failing at preventing and treating people with diabetes. According to the CDC, 12.6% of Americans have diabetes, costing us $245 billion in direct and indirect medical expenses. I've seen that the incredible diabetes can do to people, and it's pretty ugly. It is listed as the 7th leading cause of death, but because people don't really die of diabetes, but rather die of complications like kidney failure and cardiovascular disease, the number is likely much higher. The rate is only increasing, especially in countries adopting our heart healthy standard. All over the world, people are giving up their healthy traditional diets and are drinking soda instead of water, using canola oil instead of fats, and eating more refined junk foods. Oh, and it's not unhealthy, but more expensive to eat this way also. Well, we can't tell folks who have diabetes the truth, that eating and everything in moderation, high carb, low fat, and low protein diet will increase your chances of a completely preventable disease in the case of type 2 that can lead to very uncomfortable death. I wish I could still reference the Facebook post from back in October 2016 of a dessert featuring sweetened condensed milk that the American Diabetes Association posted on their Facebook before they removed it. It was classic. All I have is their response. Let's see what it is. Oh, you'll have to read the rest of this to see what the response was. Okay, beans are the ideal protein choice. Beans are one of the highest carbs protein choices you can make. Should we really be telling them that beans, dates, oats, and barley are superfoods? As a dietitian, it makes more sense when I see a patient with blood sugar issues recommend a low-carb diet, adding more protein and healthy fats. There are now a handful of people who get it. Why won't we tell diabetics the truth? The reason is, the real truth is that sugar, junk food, and insulin sells. Sugar is sexy, brownies sell magazines. Scrambled eggs, plain roasted chicken, or sautéed Swiss chard does not. There's a ton of bias against low-carb diets and a lot of financial interests pushing pharmaceutical intervention instead of a dietary change. And the people who are behind the dietary guidelines also are the ones charged with promoting agriculture, including wheat, corn, and soy. It's time to admit that we're failing diabetics. We can do better. They deserve the truth. Great article. I hope you take a chance, a couple minutes to read the whole thing. My doctor. did exactly that. He's still recommending fruit. He says, you gotta eat fruit. I do eat some berries, but, you know, fruit has natural sugar, which our body doesn't know the difference. So I'm off of all meds, staying steady at 5.6, and eating off the compliant low-carb list from our Facebook group, which is called Type 2 Diabetes Support Group. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.